2, 1.
Hey there, hi there, hello there. This is John McDonald, aka Panajohn, aka Zordon, with your fourth Friday REM chat for February 2023. If you live anywhere in America, you're probably iced in right now, just like I am. Congratulations on our National Snow Day. As promised, I am here with Kendermage. Hello, Kendermage.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday indeed. So I know Kendermage mostly through my work with the Saints and Synners episodes on the Alternate Archives and in the Savage Worlds Discord and doing stuff for Deadlands as I was trying, as my curiosity was piqued. Um, and but Kendermage predates me here at Rem Alternis, so how would people know you if I was to say Kender Mage? How would people characterize you at Realm Alternus?
I'm a Chaos Goblin who shows up on Twitch chat and in Discord as Robert Wilson, Kinder Mage, Billy Berserker in the Twitch chat, and um, I think that people like my jokes sometimes.
Well, they tolerate me, so I mean, they must really like your jokes if they tolerate mine. So, the pun joke and meme channel is a very useful place in our little corner of the underworld here. Um, yeah.
And totally not anything that you should tag Master of Rim in because it's
No, she's master of rems, not master of memes. Which I just thought was a delightful thing to just think of just now. Yeah, as always, the Rem Alternus Discord is open for all who want to come and hang out. You don't have to play tabletop games to be part of the community, but it doesn't hurt. Tabletop games like Savage Worlds, which is kind of going to be the start of our conversation, because Kender Mage got me into the system, and I really liked it as someone who struggles with things like math. I found it was less crunchy some of the other stuff I was doing. So Kindermage, do you have a like elevator pitch for Savage Worlds? Can you do it in like a minute or less or something like that?
minute or less. Okay, Savage Worlds is a polyhedral, uh, generic role-playing system that is not GURPS. It is less crunchy. The target number is 4 for everything. You roll a die that is based on your skill and a wild die, which is a d6. Add or subtract modifiers, and as long as the target number is 4 or better, you succeed. And the rest is just complications of that.
I mean, I like that. That's good. I feel like there are a lot of complications in tabletop gaming. That's part of what makes it fun, actually. And I like Savage World too because there's a whole different host of universes. We are going to talk about Saints and Sinners, which is kind of like a space opera mob boss fusion from the season we had. That's how I talk about it. I don't know how you talk about it, but I call it kind of a space opera mob boss.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Saints and Sinners is one of those settings that is really deep once you get into it. Um, and it is, as you said, space fantasy. At conventions, I try to lead people into the idea of, without saying specifically, that it is once you just dip your toe in, it's Suicide Squad meets Firefly.
Yeah.
But
And if you get bruised at the table with a little bit of Farscape in there, um, which is something I really love, the fantasy elements of it that are a little more alien, a little more foreign tech, but still familiar is something I really loved about Saints and Sinners when we did it. So yeah,
and so but the Saints and Sinners is if you ask creator Brandon, who's at Genghis Khan right now, otherwise he'd be here with me. Uh, it's based on not just Suicide Squad, Firefly. Other influences include Star Wars, Star Trek, Babylon 5 is a heavy influence, and because Shadow of Orlon conflict is deep, deep, deep in the background. It's a really rich setting, and I really look forward to Star Anvil Studios putting out more work for more books for the setting. Right now, there's a book in Tiny D6, and sometime this year they're supposed to be doing the Savage Worlds version. So
Yeah. And so Savage Worlds then doesn't just have the Saints Synners setting. They have other settings. They have Weird Wild West, I think is one of theirs. Deadlands, which is I have the New Orleans version of Deadlands. I think those are both from the same universe.
Deadlands has the classic Deadlands horror western, Deadlands Noir, which is 1930s New Orleans, post-apocalyptic Earth, and then a Deadlands Lost Colony, which is a Deadlands in space. Sometime in the next year or two, they're supposed to be doing a Deadlands Dark Ages,
Ooh.
and all of those connect in together. Pinnacle also puts out a setting called East Texas University, which is about college students. Buffy.
I think you had a chosen one in your throat there for just a moment.
Yeah, little something. I apologize. And so these students find out that discover that their college is basically on a mystical nexus, and they have to fight all of these supernatural things as they go along. And it's a really popular setting. They recently kickstarted a Pine Box Middle School, which is set in the same town as the East Texas University, which is kind of a kids on bike, Stranger Things type setting. And if you're interested in Wuxia, I apologize for mispronouncing that, martial arts, they just kickstarted a Ghost Mountain setting. Basically, if you can imagine it, there's a setting for it. There's a not Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle setting. There's a
Those Street Sharks, basically.
Yeah, similar. It's called Big Apple Sewer Samurai, where every player gets to make an anthropomorphic animal with martial arts skills, and then all the bad guys. Now that is not an official Pinnacle setting, because unlike someone Wizards Coast, Pinnacle has a game license that they offer for what they call aces, and these are third-party publishers that make settings specifically for Savage Worlds, or even if you have like if you came up with your pirate setting that you wanted to do, and you had your own system for your pirate setting, but then you said, hey, this Savage Worlds is really cool, I'm going to do a version of my pirate game in Savage Worlds, you could contact Pinnacle Entertainment, get a license, become one of their aces, and as an ace, you can publish official Savage Worlds content, official Savage Worlds settings, which is what Star Anvil Studios did with Saints and Sinners. So it's official Savage Worlds, but it's not Pinnacle.
And Savage World all kinds of folds into the main book is called Suede, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
The
Savage Worlds Adventurers Edition.
And that's the most current like base manual that you can like. The settings are cool, but you can just do it from the base manual.
Yes. It's oh my gosh, yeah. You can do everything from the core book. And
unless you're like me and you can't remember anything day to day. That's something.
But in addition to the Pinnacle products and the Ace products, they also have Swag, which is the Savage Worlds Adventurers Guild, where you can publish PDFs or print on demands on DriveThru RPG, and they just have a couple different legal things that you have to go through. It's not a full ACE license. And Pinnacle still gets a small percentage. DriveThru RPG gets their percentage. So as Shane Hensley frequently says, if you want to make money if you want to make a little money in RPG, start off with a lot of money. But if you come up with an idea, there's a path to publish it, and in fact, one of the people who tried to apply for an ACE license, he had a Appalachian cryptid setting that he was doing, and the setting was so intriguing to Shane Hensley. He said, "No, we're not going to give you an ACE license. We're going to make this an official Pinnacle product." And so Pinnacle did the Kickstarter and beautiful box set, and they just really did it up. It's the setting is called Holler, and fans of the old Appalachian Gods podcast or role playing game might be interested in the Holler Savage Worlds setting. So
Yeah, I really like that. I like something that you can really make your own. One of the things that I always kind of felt trapped in with D&D specifically was the old high fantasy, because it felt like if you want to try something a little different, it makes it difficult when you're stuck in one specific genre, even doing things outside that genre. So I like that Savage Worlds lets you play in different worlds, be you savage or polite. Um, Another thing I kind of love about Savage Worlds that we see in Saints and Sinners, that maybe because we were doing it in podcast and it wasn't a visual, is that we used cards. We had like a website we went to, but we used cards basically for initiative, if I remember correctly.
yep,
Right? Yep. Do you like that card mechanic?
I do like it. I went ahead and dropped the link for the it's a character creator and initiative tracker and a couple of other tools that are really useful for Savage Worlds. It's called Savage US. Um, Check it out. It's free to try. Um, I do like the card initiative because and it also changes every turn, because the turns are uh, because action takes place so quickly in Savage Worlds. Um, Not knowing at the end of the turn who's going to go first, that makes it really interesting. Also, you can spend a Benny in order to draw an extra card, or you can spend one of your character advances to get an edge so that you get an extra card every turn. There's all kinds of fun and interesting things that you can do with the initiative in Savage Worlds. One of the If you're playing in person, one of the interesting things is having card decks that fit your theme of your game. I don't have a large card deck collection, but what I do have is I went out and I bought about 4 inexpensive decks, because my first convention running Savage Worlds, uh, I started flipping cards over for the initiative at the game, and there was a joker. So you have to shuffle the deck as soon as you get a joker. The person who draws the joker gets a Benny and a bonus in game, and for that round. Then the next round of combat, I dealt out cards from my second deck, and I drew a joker again. So I was like, okay, guess I'm going to deck number 3. And wouldn't you know it, I hit the third deck, another joker on like the 4th round of combat total, and I was like, okay, this is a lot of fun. This is the kind of thing that that players really enjoy, and I don't know if you're aware of the secret GM trick to get people hooked on a game, and that is
Usually it's give them power armor and a magical Zord beast, in my experience, but that just might be because I'm doing a Power Ranger podcast currently. But that's part of it, though. So
Make what they do in their first game session really awesome, and they'll keep coming back for more. So, a Shadowrun game that I ran was I had a player that was interested in Shadowrun, and he jumped out and was watching this combat take place in a gang hideout, and he decided to open a window and jump through. I said, "Okay, roll your athletics." The athletics roll turned up to have like 8 successes because I built this character specifically to get into close combat for the player. And he says, "Well, I just go through the window." I said, "No, no, no. You got 8 successes. You just you vault in like an Olympic gymnast, land on both feet, land the superhero landing, come up with knives in both hands, and what do you say? That's super cool." And he thought about it for a second. He goes, "Die, fraggers," and started stabbing people, which anybody who knows Panajohn knows that stabbing is one of their favorite activities in role-playing games. So,
it's a love language, is what it is. Well, I mean, in Saints and Sinners, I traded that for a space rifle named Suzanne.
yes.
It's it's a weapon of affection, no matter what the weapon is. And I definitely felt that in Saints and Sinners is that one, I didn't know where the story was going, so it was always very exciting. But two, that you were both in control of the story, but when we started doing things like building stills in our spaceship and almost killing our ship doctor in episode 1, you really
That
just
wasn't even
let that
episode
happen.
1. That was the session 0 that the doctor almost died. Oh, poor
Uh,
Kaz. Who's who,
ironically, they outlived other characters, though. That's
now don't be giving away all the secrets. I mean, it's only been out for 8 months now, a year now.
8 months, a year. How long has it been?
It's
Time flies. Seasons change. Um, yeah,
but the podcast will be out there forever to listen to on Alternia
forever.
Archives.
What's great is that the people editing the podcast edit out the moments of silence where I'm like, "What am I doing? What am I doing again?" All the people that listen to me as Panajohn in the first 10 or so episodes of like Clockwork on Sundays know that I'm not very good at remembering things at all times. So I'm grateful for the patience, and now I'm GMing. So the world is wacky. Do what you love, you know. So also before we go into Saints and Sinners, I want to circle back for people that don't know Savage World lingo. What is a Benny? Because I know what it is. Like I call it kind of like Edge and Shadowrun, but a Benny does stand for benefit, but we call them Bennies.
Right. So the game was originally tabletop. This is before it was it was a response to 3rd edition D&D, and Shane Hensley wanted to make something fast, furious, and fun. And so it was meant for tabletop. It was meant for being played in person. Playing online really wasn't a thing back in 2002. So he came up with the idea of poker chips, and this was an extension of the Deadlands role playing game, which preceded Savage Worlds. And so in the Deadlands game, you could get poker chips for experience and different in-game mechanics and things like that. He decided to simplify everything so that the bennies could be used for, which are chips or tokens or something along those lines. If you're playing online with Savage US, it's just a number in a box, unfortunately. Not as cool as having like a sheriff's badge for a token or something like that. But
I will say in real life, don't use M&Ms or Starburst because you'll eat them. and you'll lose track.
I
So probably
actually
shouldn't use things you like.
I actually did that for a Valentine's Day game of Saints and Synners that I was running locally, and I had 8 players, and 2 of them were teenagers. And I looked over, and the hacker, the Volcolasai hacker, so Kazran's size, the claws, the fur, Wolfman type thing, as a hacker, being played by this diminutive 12-year-old high schooler. Yes, they were in high school at 12 years old. I look over at them, and they've eaten all of their bennies. And I said, "So do you want to use a benny for that?" I appear to have eaten all of my bennies, but I will, however, use one of this person's bennies, and reached across the table to one of the other players, grabbed one of their M&Ms and popped it in their mouth, and said, "Yes, I'll use that benny."
Oh.
It was so cool. I was just like, all right, we're going to roll with this. So you can use the bennies to draw a different card in initiative. You can spend a benny to go first in initiative, like Edge in Shadowrun, in fifth edition. You can use it to reroll everything except for a Snake Eyes, which is the bestest part of Savage Worlds. I call it Snake Eyes. It's a critical failure. It's when you roll a 1 on your trait die and 1 on your wild die. At my game table, I tell players, if you roll a critical failure, describe how it is, and it will probably go better for you if you describe it than if I get to describe it, because I will really mess with your world. And I've had some very creative descriptions, and it's a lot of fun to wildly describe how you fail. In the Saints and Synners game that we played on the Alternis archives, Bruce crit failed a repair roll on his blaster pistol. The "don't point that at my planet" pistol. And
I would have argued the same for his computer, but that's just the way Brews lived their life.
Yes. And so I asked Falcone, how does Bruce fail his repair roll? And he goes, "It's broken?" I was like, "No, it works. Just ask yourself, that it still works. It works perfectly." And then I gave him the big GM smile, the evil GM smile, which players generally don't like. But if you make a roll on your dice and you don't like the result of the roll, or if your GM is evil and prods you into spending a benny, you can spend a benny to re-roll the dice, and then you can take the higher of the 2 values that you want. So bennies are very useful. One of the interesting things about Savage Worlds is you get bennies by doing something cool in game, by playing into a hindrance. So in character generation, you can pick hindrances that make your character, all heroes have flaws. Some of them are fatal.
Some of them are the people they work with, as we found out in Saints and Synners. Sometimes your coworkers are the flaws.
And but by doing something, if your character is curious and you're going along and you decide, my character is going to go ahead and hack that computer system, even though he doesn't have to. We're getting ready to leave the top secret bad guy lair. We've bypassed all of the alarms, but I just want to see what's in this computer system over here. So I'm going to go ahead and hack it.
Yeah.
Go ahead and have a Benny for that because your character is curious. What happens after that? Well, the dice tell a story.
I mean, what happens after that is when you send pizzas to the bad guy's office and come back to bite you later. In theory, who knows? You'll just have to listen in to find out how accurate that is. Um, I loved the interactivity that we did on down to the name of the ship, because Leviathan was an homage to one of my favorite Ray Bradbury stories, Leviathan 99, which is Moby Dick in space, essentially.
Mhm.
So even down to the name of our Millennium Falcon-esque junk ship that we cobbled together with hope and love from the people on high was an homage to something that I love dearly in sci-fi. So
Well, and there were a lot of firsts. I've run a number of Saints and Sinners games, but the Alternia Archive podcast had a lot of firsts. It was the first time that a character almost died in session 0. It was the first time that I've ever had a player take elderly and alcoholic.
potentially the same character, who knows?
Mm-hmm. It was the first time that I had a character death. I don't remember the last time I had a character death in Shadowrun as a GM, but in Savage Worlds, this is the first time that I can recall having a character death. And if you're interested, then make sure you listen to all of the Alternia Archives episodes because it was shocking. It was unexpected on a number of levels.
And what's nice too is that Savage Worlds Saints and Sinners, the setting, feels like such a big universe, but there was an intimacy in being on that ship. It really did feel more like a workplace dramedy in some aspects than it did like it almost felt more office like sometimes than it did Star Wars on the Millennium Falcon. We got there, but there was downtime in getting to the locations. Um, and once we added Yolanda to the crew, I was very excited about that. So
Yolanda was a favorite character of mine, and I had an idea for Yolanda before we started the campaign. One of the drawbacks to my day job is that I spend a lot of time walking around in circles, and it gives me a lot of time to think. So after session 0, I was like, okay, I'd already mapped out the mini campaign and the different events that I was going to throw at the players with the creator of Saints and Sinners. And so he had an idea of what was going to happen. I don't think he totally expected what was going to happen. But he says that every time I run Saints and Sinners, it's something totally different than what even he has imagined Saints and Sinners could be. His Saints and Sinners campaign is more of a Star Wars-esque. Mine is more of a Shadowrun in space. But Yolanda was a lot of fun because I realized that although Falcone has a lot of knowledge of Savage Worlds and had played Saints and Sinners before with the creator at Star Anvil Studios, he hadn't done a whole lot of research on some of the material that I was using for the mini campaign. And so it's kind of like in Shadowrun, they put out the splat books for all of the different archetypes. Savage Worlds has genre splat books. So they've done horror, fantasy. I believe they're going to do science fiction later on this year. And so these companion books are just filled with ideas that are specific to a genre. And and the superhero companion, which a couple of weeks ago I ran a superhero game for Chris, who is on a lot of these Rim Alternis podcasts. Falcone, who's in the Saints and Synners podcast. You and Chris did Brutal Crit Wrestling, which was one of the first Alternate Archive.
We did.
episodes.
Infamously, yes, they let us in a room together and just let everything happen. And I clobbered his poor grandmother in game with the metal folding chair. Iconically, that was my heel turn, which I'm still not sure what it means, but it was a lot of fun.
So but the cyberware that Yolanda has is just this obscure little piece of cyberware in a book that is right now out of print because they're getting ready to redo the science fiction companion for Suede. And I was like, this is a fun character concept, and and so her cyberware is interesting. The character concept it's drawn from the universe, but it's just a little bit extra. And I know you and I have talked about the possibility of a Leviathan flying again mini campaign, and the idea that you might take over the play of Yolanda.
Yeah. I was really intrigued by Yolanda because as a queer person, there is more queer representation in games now, but there's something about the idea of this kind of self-actualized, very witty sex worker character, essentially. And that part of queerness, that part of otherness, I haven't really gotten to experience at a table before, and it was so cool to see it also in kind of the canon universe of this idea of what does it mean now to be human? How much does technology divorce us of that? And what does it mean to protect yourself? Because a lot of what Yolanda does is about protection in a way. It's about being able to master situations and get out of them. And it just made sense for Yolanda to become a member of the crew anyways. Because as dysfunctional as we were, we really did need like a bridge character between kind of the Bruise and Flint faction that were like off doing their thing, and the faction that was more grounded, that was just trying to get through the missions and were less chaotic. I tried not to make a chaotic character. I tried so hard. I was like, I'm just gonna make this character that's a sniper. I could do this, and then it just kind of took on a life of its own. So
when Teslin signed up for the game and realized that you were going to be in the game, because there for a long time he was doing tech on like clockwork, so he knew what he was getting into having you as a player. Teslin is GM for Roadkill, who played Kazran in the Saints and Synners campaign, so he knew what to expect there. I don't think he expected you and Bruce to just totally take things in different directions than, because Teslin is very Shadowrun oriented, and he knew that I was running this as a Shadowrun in space type game. So he was like, okay, so we're going to get the mission, we're going to plan, things are going to go sideways, and we haven't even gotten to the mission yet, and things have already gone sideways. Okay.
I cannot take credit for the ships still, at least. I cannot take credit for that bit of opening chaos. But it was so fun to watch that happen in real time, because I was like, wow, somebody's going to die. That's not something I expected at the beginning.
Well, and the whole, sometimes I thought that another player would have kind of balanced things out a little more and kept things a little more on track. But you guys just had that lightning in a bottle chemistry that you so rarely get at a game table. And for us to come together every week for, what was it, 6, 8 weeks, something like that, and have that fun every single time we got together. It really was a lot of fun, and I very rarely see that at the game table where everybody just sits down, plays their character, and the character interactions become this just Rubik's cube of complexity as everybody tries to feel out what's my character's place in the universe and what am I supposed to be doing here at this point? How can I help us achieve our goals without completely blowing up the ship? Which was a possibility. Oh, no, 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 wait, no, that was when Falcone played in Ava's Aliens game, which followed the Saints and Sinners on the Arconia, Alternia archives.
Yes.
Um, but there were a couple of times when you guys were closer to the ship being destroyed than you realized. So,
No, I got the playing a character where I was trying so hard to be emotionally detached and a workaholic, and yet be focused, hyper focused on the goals that I had as Flint. I really was playing kind of this almost iconoclastic paladin character, but in their own mind they're a paladin, and everyone else's they're just a jerk with a rifle. But
he,
Flint,
he
Flint, Flint had a goal. So
he was very goal oriented. He is very goal oriented. He is very sniper in his focus. And you know, when you're a sniper and you have a large rifle that shoots things far away, that tends to be how you deal with most problems. So
ironically, I added in like I think one of the not hindrances, but when it's good, and I
the
can't think of the
edges.
term right now. The edges, yeah. So like I started adding edges, and then I realized I wanted to kind of play a Bond character, so I started making him handsome, and then more handsome, and then more handsome, until he was basically Fish Daniel Craig as Bond, as Bond essentially.
And that was a lot of fun too um because the players developed their characters independently of each other. Basically, while they felt out the Savaged US website, um everybody kind of had their own different idea of what part of the team they were going to play. Uh, Teslin was assuming that he was going to be the negotiator, the talker, the face with a little bit of fighting ability going on. Um, Kazran was a tank, and he was all about how to. He wanted to be the healer, but his concept is that if the healer goes down, then the whole team is fragged. And so he wanted to make a tank character, and so he made this big wall of fur. And then Falcone created Bruise as a Nakira actor with Curious because I have a soft spot in my heart for the Nakira. Nakira are a small bat-like race in the Saints and Sinners setting. They are the best species ever. They fly, they're small, they're stealthy, they have echolocation so they can see in the dark. They're just an amazing species and the best all around.
I always kind of visioned Bruce Wayne, which was the full name of his character. I always kind of vision him as the peg leg bat from Great Mouse Detective, because like when you tell me there's an anthropomorphic bat character, that's what I go to in my brain because I'm a '90s kid. I really loved. I loved how authentic the characters were, but I loved the authenticity juxtaposed with that of the universe, because the Suicide Squad premise is very apt for our group, especially. That was what we technically were. We were a band of criminals doing nefarious activities, and the backstory of that, and then the backstory of the whole universe. Like you really have to pick specific things almost in order to not get swallowed by the vastness of the story. Because even just the idea of human versus android, not knowing he's an android and what powers they have, is very kind of prevalent in an undertone in the idea of, can you really trust anyone on your team? And I love that. So
There have been some evolution in how the Saint system works. Originally, it was a Saint agent would go out with the team, and so you had one good guy surrounded by a bunch of bad guys, trying to keep all the bad guys from doing bad things.
if we had that, I would have felt so bad for their liver. There's no way that still would have been emptied every day.
So then he creator Brandon came up with the idea of an implant, not a cortex bomb like in Shadowrun, but like a control rod like the droids have in Star Wars, where if you misbehave, they kind of give you a little zot. In the finally published version, Saint actually installs an AI chip into the Saint agent's head to keep them from killing. Aside from that, everything goes.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, that's kind of interesting. But if somebody watching this is going to run their own Saints and Sinners campaign, know that you can run it however you want to. One of the cool parts about the Saints and Sinners setting is that there's Space Marines. So if you want to have Space Marines doing bug hunts, that's a thing you can do. If you want to do a Gunsmoke-esque Deep Space Nine type, Law and Order in the wild space western, you can do that.
There'd be something really cool about taking the idea of a living ship like on Event Horizon and doing something really dark and horror driven too. That Saints and Sinners would let you do. I don't know if that happened so much in the Alien RPG. That was definitely a different direction Ava took it, but there's something about Saints and Sinners and the vastness of the universe that would really allow you to dive into what you love about sci-fi, especially. So,
well, and I had talked with Ava because she was the producer for the Saints and Sinners podcast, and I had said, hey, there's some artwork that is kind of might be trigger cringy, safety tools. And she was like, oh no, Teslin and I already went over the safety tools and everybody's paperwork, and everything's fine. You'll be okay. Everything's fine. And then I remember in the midst of recording the podcast, I put up artwork from the Saints and Sinners Facebook page, or the Star Anvil Studios Facebook page, and you had a visceral reaction. I mean, you were I need to nope out of this. These monsters are just horrifying. And so, yes, horror is definitely an aspect to the Saints and Sinners universe, if that is something that you're interested in. Yeah. Me personally, I've never enjoyed making people uncomfortable. But for some groups, it's how they have fun. So it's there.
And I still had a great time at the game. I don't even remember that now. But there is, space itself is a horrifying concept, especially if you're afraid of isolation. Something I loved about Saints and Sinners that brought to my mind, there is a kind of junky 80s sci-fi compilation of books, the Deathstalker series by Simon Green, I think, where it's like every trope is stuffed in them. So if I wanted to take like the living maze that gives you superpowers from the Deathstalker series, which is essentially what it is, it's a Deus Ex Machina maze that drives you mad or gives you powers, depending upon the day you enter. I could put that easily in Saints and Sinners as either just like a thing in the middle to give more plot, or as like a way to enter the universe. And having different ways to enter this kind of vast post-war universe is really cool. Um, I don't know how much thought was put into the idea of it being post-war, but I really like that as a way to kind of open up how people react to each other.
Um, like I've mentioned earlier, there was a lot of influences from Star Wars and Babylon 5. And so this is kind of a we're rebuilding from the war, but there's all of these horrific things from the wars that are still out there. War is hell is one of the ideas that can be explored out there. Had talked with the creator about doing uh, a mini campaign for during the Armageddon War, and he was like, he was lukewarm at the idea. He goes, if you want to run it, run it. He goes, but for me, I want to explore everything that's happened after the war, because what's happened after, you have all the consequences that are having to be dealt with, and so
So in that way, it's closer to like a Deep Space Nine or Babylon 5 than like a Sequest DVS or even a Stargate, where Stargate is presently engaged in the war. The war isn't just a backdrop. The war is like prevalent.
right
Um,
now,
yeah,
that's not to say that in future Saints and Sinners expansions there won't be conflicts between stellar powers, or even civil unrest within, say, the Alliance or the corporate worlds or something like that. Um, there's there's a lot of plot hooks in the Saints and Sinners book that the creator has put in there, things that will be explored in the future, or things that he's just going to uh, let players and the groups individually run with in their own games. So
yeah.
a lot of
I
potential.
liked I liked the casino aspect. I'm not really much for heist films. It's very rare when I loved one, but there was something that you did in how you connected kind of the outposts to the casinos that I really liked, point to point, because there's something very much in a casino. It's not a place where you're ever going to find home, and it felt like there was this idea of a lack of home, especially in on the Leviathan, where we were somehow both home, but it was a workplace, and we are going from outpost to casino, and it was just never a thing that sat still. And I really love that a lot as a concept. So, yeah.
I I came up with the idea of Los Monaco. Um,
Which means the Monaco.
yeah, well, it's supposed to be a combination of Las Vegas and Monaco, and because
Yeah.
I didn't want it to be one place in particular turned into a planet, but it is a small desert planet, um, and with a lot of rich people and a lot of people that are down on their luck because of their gambling addictions, and but lots of shows and glitzy things, but then you also have kind of the nitty gritty, rubbing shoulders with the ultra wealthy that come in on their space yachts. Um, it's and I tried to and it's still being the Saints and Sinners universe. Of course, there's criminals,
Yes.
all kinds of criminals. So
It takes
um,
all kinds. Sometimes they charge you extra for that, though.
sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes.
I don't know if you realize this or not, but on the Star Anvil Discord, I go by the name Ober de Avis, and when the Leviathan crew was on Los Monaco, uh, they met Ober. He was the sceptred, the lizard, anthropomorphic lizard that tried to con them, uh, and so uh, he's kind of my in person con man character that I use sometimes. when I was playing Shadowrun. No, you are destructive felines.
We get a lot of that on Fourth Friday Rem chats. Lots of people with their cats. So I'm not mad about it. Oh, hello! Aren't you adorable?
This is Georgie. He is Chaos Incarnate. He is also fluffy and looking for food.
Aren't we all?
But they so the so Ober is my character. But one of the cool parts about because my actual name is Robert, and I got my name from my grandfather, who I never met. And so when I explained that, the significance of Robert and Ober is Robert with the R and T dropped off, Brandon went ahead and put a Robert into the game as the head of Saint. Robert Inglis is the head of Saint, published canon character. So named for my grandfather and a town that the creator grew up near in Florida. So
I am really glad. I think Ober was one of the people whose arm I didn't shoot off or attempt to shoot
yes,
off. So I'm glad that worked out.
I believe you were at that point. You were sussing. I mean, trying to figure out how security worked in the and trying to find a job with the security there at that particular casino. So
it's true, and there's something very gratifying about a laser rifle. And then if you, I think I rolled well enough that at some point in the adventure, I cauterize someone's arm off because and you have to take the opportunities where you can get them.
that was actually one of the henchmen for your nemesis. Yes.
I love having a nemesis. Okay, so it's getting close to the top of the hour, so I want to be able to wrap this up. Is there anything about Saints and Sinners that we haven't talked about that you wanted to cover about it to get people really jazzed for it, or even just get people listening to the alternate archives and going back to the episodes?
It's a lot of fun. I think I don't know. Okay, so as the GM, I obviously had fun playing it. My players had fun playing it, but going back and listening to it, I had just as much fun listening to it over again after we played. I even went back and listened to the during the holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas at the end of the year. I started re-listening to the episodes because somebody that I worked with had said, "Hey, did you guys ever finish the podcast for the Saints and Sinners?" I was like, "Yeah, here's the link." And when I went and looked up the link, I was like, "I might as well just start listening to it." It's a lot of fun to listen to. Um, it's a lot of fun to have inspiration, and I hope that people listening to the podcast will go out and do their own Saints and Sinners campaign and have a lot of fun with it too.
Yeah. Speaking of which, if people want to come to you for tips on Saints and Sinners or have questions of you or Brandon or me, if they want to say, how dare you, besides joining us in the Rem Alternis, you can tell me how dare you in the Rem Alternis Discord. People do it all the time. Or maybe it's just me. But where can people find you? Where do you hang out at? Besides for the icy rink pond that is America currently, since we're all experiencing that, unless you're living in Washington D.C. where the cherry blossoms are blossoming.
I am almost always, for at least a short amount of time, in the Twitch chat at twitch.tv/Master of Rim. I can be found at the Rem Alternis Discord. There is a Saints Star Anvil Studios Discord, which you can find the link to if you go to Star Anvil Studios on Facebook. There's so Twitch and Discord are pretty much the main ways that I interact with people anymore. I'm hoping that we get another slot in the Alternia archives with a second flight of the Leviathan. That would be ideal.
That would be nice, yes.
And on Thursdays, I am currently moderating every other week the Gen Con TV show that is being produced by Rem Alternis Productions. So you can find Billy Berserker 2076. Yeah, if you find Billy Berserker, hence the helmet, then know that you're talking to Billy, Kendermage, Ober, as you put in one of the social advertisements, a man of many names.
Man of many names and many talents. I'm also very grateful to have you as both a colleague and a friend. I've been very inspired by just watching what you do. I came to tabletop gaming late in life, so like it's just so incredibly cool to watch people just do this and have done this for for what feels like such a long time. And I think it's just a really neat form of theater and self-expression that I'm so lucky to be a part of, you know.
If you're not having fun playing, then you need to try something different. So that's my rule of thumb. So yeah, keep playing. Have fun.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to end to keep playing and have fun. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to Fourth Friday Rem Chats. We're going to be wiggling Fourth Friday Rem Chats around a little bit. Hopefully it'll still be happening on Fridays. But we have something new coming on Fridays starting in March. Actually, I think it's the second week of March. I'm going to see if I can do this. Because we have a whole new slew. So there's a whole bunch of stuff coming to Rem, right? And so starting the second week of March, which starts on the 6th, we're going to have Paranormal Albany, but starting, I think it's, Max can yell at me, or someone can yell at me if I get this wrong, but I think starting on the 7th on Tuesdays, every other Tuesday, we're going to have a new show called Hellslayer, which has some Saints and Sinner vibes, and that you're going off and shooting stuff as sort of a Space Marine character, hoping you survive. And that's going to be led by Mr. Johnson. I want to say, again, if I'm getting this information wrong, I apologize. But it is all starting that week as far as I'm aware. And then on the 8th, for every other Wednesday, I'm going to be coming in with Power Rangers Centurion, which is a new Power Rangers tabletop brought to you by the Renegade Game Studios folks. What's happening with the Shadowrun stuff is it's all kind of moving to the Shadowcasters Network YouTube. And so I don't know how much longer it's going to be like on the live stream stuff we do, but it's still Shadowrun's not going anywhere. It's just all kind of moving there too. And then on Friday night we have Well of the Worlds coming, which I've got many a friend in that, and they're really enjoying doing that. And that's going to be every other Friday. So we're going to be fiddling around with where the Rem chats go, but I want to keep doing it. If you're part of the Rem community and you want to have your own Rem chat, we can talk about anything. I'm trying to talk the people of Buffy the Vampire Slayer into doing March chat, because that's when Buffy the Vampire Slayer celebrates its anniversary. So I'm working on that. Fingers crossed. If you like Buffy and you're part of the Rem community, hit me up. We'll work something out. And that's going to be all for Rem Chat. We are at the top of the hour. Not sure if we have D&D, but Saturday mornings are usually D&D. Descent into Avernus has returned, and you're going to want to descend with them tomorrow morning. And we are going to be doing, starting next week at some point, casting calls for the Streamathon at the end of April to celebrate our 3rd anniversary. And that's all the news that's fit to print, as they used to say on Old Saturday Night Live. Thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a great night. Thank you, Kendermage. And let's wave as we go off.